Why the first wholesaling deal is always the hardest. What is up, guys? Zach Ginn here, and in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly why you are struggling wholesaling houses, and more specifically, why pretty much everyone struggles their first deal, because it's always the first wholesaling deal that is going to be the hardest. It's going to give you the most friction and the most stress. But from what I found in my 8 years of wholesaling and thousands of deals and teaching hundreds of thousands of people wholesaling real estate, once they crack that first deal, the whole game opens up and it gets a lot easier. So we got to talk about cracking that first deal. And the way that I like to view wholesaling real estate, especially as a beginner trying to crack that first deal, is with a driving analogy. So I like to think about wholesaling real estate as getting from point A all the way here to point B. And we're going against a nice little drive, and we are driving from here all the way to here. Point B can be, the promised land, right? Your first wholesale deal. So awesome getting the money, right? Now, kind of like driving a car, you start here, having no money, having no deals, nothing. And we want to get here to point B, which is a deal. And to use a metaphorical car example analogy, the distance between point A and B is 500 miles, okay? 500 miles. That means right here is 400 miles. Right here is 300 miles, not for scale. 200, 100 miles. Then obviously right here is going to be 0 miles. Now, I have personally seen wholesalers who will go and drive 200 miles, right? And say, why haven't I got a deal yet? Why haven't I got a deal yet, bro? And I'm like, okay, you want to go from, let's say, Los Angeles to Las Vegas, and you're like 15 miles in the trip, and you say, why am I not there yet? Like, it's kind of like the laws of physics. You can't break them. And wholesaling has their own rules. Like if you go from point A 200 miles and you want to know why am I not 500 miles yet? Well, the clearest reason why is within 15 minutes you do not drive 500 miles. It's because you are not going 5,000 miles per hour. You can do the calculations, right? So if you want to get from point A to B within an hour, you have to go 500 miles an hour. So if your car will only go 100 miles an hour, you should expect 5 hours to get there. You should not expect to get there within 15 minutes. And this is a big problem plague in the wholesaling industry, where we expect to basically defy the laws of physics. Now, there are plenty of ways to get 500 miles within an hour, but you have to spend a lot of money. You can charter a private jet, you can go on a commercial airline, you can maybe go on a high-speed train, there's some quick ones out there. But to go into a regular Hyundai, Sonata, Toyota Camry, you're just not going to get from A to B that quick. You should have some realistic expectations, but you should also have the ability to get there with your unrealistic expectations, because there are correct vehicles to go there. So again, you want to get here in 30 minutes? I recommend an F-16 fighter jet. If you do not have an F-16 fighter jet budget, maybe you have a Toyota Camry budget, we got to understand our vehicles. So point A to point B is wholesaling. How fast we get there is depending on our vehicle. The coolest part about wholesaling real estate is there's so many different vehicles you can do to get to success. Now on the top here, I'm gonna put some kind of unrealistic vehicles, right? So we can do like vehicle number 1. So our first one obviously is an F-16 fighter jet, right? We can have the crazy smoke, probably cost us $7,000 every 5 minutes to go operate the thing, and I don't know what legalities is to own it, but you could do that, right? You could theoretically send 50,000 pieces of direct mail and get a wholesale deal really dang quick. But not a lot of people want to drop $30,000 a month in marketing just to get the first deal. So we got to understand you can get very far in a very short amount of time without working at all by using very quick vehicles for wholesaling, but most of them are very expensive. What I found in wholesaling, the fastest ways to get a deal with relatively the least amount of work are always going to be the most expensive. What a shocker. But there are strategies that are free, not too stressful, that you can get a deal pretty quick in. But I kind of use the F-16 fighter jet as kind of a joke, but some people really want to travel 1,000 miles an hour without spending any money. There's not much you can do there. So that is vehicle number 1 for us to get that first deal. Probably not possible. A second vehicle we can have is, a Toyota Camry. Very cheap, very effective, and it does get us from point A to point B. But here's the problem with a Toyota Camry. You cannot drive a Toyota Camry for about an hour and expect to get 500 miles out there. It just ain't gonna work. Now the thing ain't gonna break down, it's reliable, but you should expect maybe 8, 9, 10 hours I can get from point A to B to get a deal. And you're not gonna spend a lot of money and you're not gonna get crazy gas mileage. It's not gonna kill you. And it is a little painful to do. Maybe there's no crazy surround sound system, but it's a very, very good point A to point B car. And if you put 4 gallons of gas in the tank and expect to get 500 miles, this vehicle will not do it for you, unfortunately. And that's another thing in wholesaling, right? I like to think of fuel as the amount of hours and time you put into the vehicle. So for example, if I put a gallon of gasoline in this F-16 fighter jet, which is, maybe money, it ain't gonna get there. This sucker probably burns 5 gallons of fuel every minute. So you have to put money or fuel in the vehicles for it to go. Now, the interesting part about Toyota Camry is if you give it a full tank of gas and you fuel it up 2 or 3 times, you can easily get from point A to B within 10, 11, 12 hours. But if you tell me, Zach, I have no money at all, I don't want to have a vehicle, and I just want to get there, I want to get from point A to B without spending any money or no gas at all. Well, number 3, you can use an actual bike or a bicycle. Now you might be like, Zach, I'm not using a bike. Well, you told me that you don't want to spend any money on gas and you can't possibly spend any money at all to get this trip done. So if you don't want to spend any money in gas, there is a way to get from point A to B. And yes, it is just pedaling with your own force on a bike. Has somebody ever gone 500 miles on a bike ride? Yes. Is it fun? No. Will you almost pass out at the end? Yes. But will you get from point A to B within a certain amount of time? Yes. You can get from 0 miles to 500 miles. It might take you a week, a month, a couple days, depending on how crazy you are. But you can definitely get there. It's just going to take a lot longer than a car. And it is way cheaper, but a lot more physical effort. So this might be like door knocking, texting sellers, right, manually on Google Voice. It's like, well, I just want a nice automated system. I click a button and tens of thousands of texts are sent. Well, go get a Toyota Camry, bro. It's way better. And I might be like, Zach, I like the Toyota Camry, but I just want to get there faster. You can get a sports car if you want, like a crazy fancy sports car. You will probably get from point A to B way faster than the Toyota Camry, but it is going to cost you a lot more money and it's going to burn a lot more gas, which maybe is not a problem. You might be like, Zach, speed is so important because maybe I get to 1,000 miles and go point A, B, back, forth, and I can lap the Toyota Camry. So this is like a race. Like you want to get rich within 2, 3, 4 months, like really, really quick, like hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. Maybe a sports car is your thing. You got to remember, a sports car is a lot more expensive than a Toyota Camry, and you'll definitely get a lot faster distances, but it is going to take a lot more fuel and definitely a lot more cost. It's not crazy lavish like an F-16 fighter jet or a private jet, but it's not too cheap and strenuous like a regular bike. So my analogies in wholesaling, I kind of look at it like this, right? Maybe the F-16 fighter jet is like going out here and doing $50,000 of like Facebook ads, right? You can do direct mail. Maybe you're doing like 30,000 postcards. Like this is just extreme stuff. But there are wholesalers that use it, and people like me, like I do a lot of this stuff. It definitely gets me there very fast, but it's not very efficient with fuel, but still it'll make a good return on my money. Now, if you look at a Toyota Camry, the way I kind of look at like a solid Camry is maybe sending like 30,000 texts a month. Maybe you're using like maybe like an X leads dialer. So maybe you're calling like 30 hours a week, which will definitely get a lot of good leads. And it's not the cheapest thing, but like it'll cost you like $250 a month to send like 30,000 texts. So not the end of the world. You can bring this down and make it $100 a month, but like you could definitely spend some fuel, but you'll definitely get there in a good amount of time. And like a bike, which I'm not telling you to like, don't do it, but like if you have no money, you shouldn't expect to be able to send 30,000 texts in a month with just a click of a button really easy and have AI like answer the like there's cost to these things, unfortunately, and just the fuel cost. You can use a regular bike. And trust me, it is not fun. But will you cover the distance if you work hard enough? Yes. And when you get the money, then you can go buy a car or something and go from there. That's kind of the journey of being 10 years old and then getting a car. And like, you're never going to ride your bike to school ever again. But like a bike, for example, you can do this for just, I call it Google Voice cold calling, Google Voice texting, maybe a little bit of like reverse driving for dollars, maybe some driving for dollars. Maybe that's like like an electric scooter, maybe, you know, like you're kind of cheating a little on the bike. You got the electric scooter, like the e-bike. It's not as good as a car, but you could get 500 miles on like an e-bike if you keep charging that sucker. Like you can definitely get that distance done. And a sports car is going to be kind of like a more advanced system. I kind of look at it like a VA system where you're doing you're doing massive calling and texting. Sports car, you know, like massive calling, massive texting. Maybe you're throwing some JV deals in here. And yeah, I'm using like a triple line dialer, right? I'm doing like 90,000 texts a month. I'm spending like $1,000, maybe $2,000 a month. But you've done that because you found the car has been really profitable at Toyota. And if I can get there even faster, I'll make even more money, but I gotta spend a little bit of money there. Do you see these systems, especially for your first deal, you don't have to spend any money. Like you can go out here, $0, get a deal. What I do recommend for everybody, everyone wants to know like, Zach, like what would you tell a beginner to do? I'd probably tell you to start right here. Like honestly, use the free bike, and just pedal to the metal, like no joke. And from there, once you get your deal, I'd probably invest number 2 here into getting the little Camry. And then I would go throw in a sports car once you're getting like 1 to 2 deals a month. And then when you start really going nuts, because you can get Lamborghinis and Bugattis, and then go crazy and get the F-16 jet. But you should graduate, right? There's steps to the game in wholesaling. And if you're telling yourself that you're struggling, there's probably 5 reasons why. The first reason, which I've explained on this board, is a lack of marketing. You are just not getting from point A to B enough. So a lot of you guys just really need to wake up to reality of how wholesaling real estate works. And you know, the 5 reasons why you're not getting your first wholesale deal is number 1, just a lack of marketing. You can also go out here and call it maybe like a lack of action, but this really comes down to not getting from point A to B. You're getting to like 300 miles and wondering why you're not getting there. You need to do 500 miles a month to get a deal a month. That's simple. You don't like what you're doing? Well, pedal harder or get a better vehicle. Those are your choices. And especially if you're in like this A to B point A to point B race. Let's say you're going out here and you're chugging along here. You should know your KPIs, your key performance indicators. You should know things like, hey, what's my miles per gallon right now? Am I efficient with my fuel? Am I not? This is one thing I see a lot of wholesalers struggle with, but they will never tell me things like how many calls they're making, what's their contact rate, how many leads they get per hour of work. You got to know these things, right? You also got to know, your contact rate. I'm gonna get rid of miles per gallon because that's not really what it is for wholesaling, but you should know how many calls or texts are being sent out. You should know exactly how many leads you get per day. You should know how many hours you're working. You should know how many leads need a follow-up. And most importantly, you should have an action plan or a schedule. And what I've seen from the majority of wholesalers that say, I just can't get a first deal, I'm struggling, it's because you're not accountable. You have this really bad lack of accountability, and you're not tracking how many calls or texts you're making. You don't know your contact rate, which is how many calls, how many people pick up, to know how efficient you are. You gotta know if you're even just pedaling enough. You gotta know how many leads you're producing per day. You need to know how many leads you're following up with. You gotta know how many hours you're working, and you should get a plan and stick to that plan, which we'll talk about today too. But if you're not doing this, you are destined just to struggle here in wholesaling real estate. Now, what else will cause somebody to struggle to get their first deal? We've also found a lack of knowledge to be an issue. So this could be not knowing how to close sellers. Maybe it's like, okay, Zach, I know I have to get from point A to B, but what is the distance? Because it's not like that example where it's well, 0, 500 miles. Like, how many calls do I have to make? How many texts do I have to make to get a wholesaling deal? Well, I'm gonna show you at the end exactly how many calls, texts, emails, door knocks, whatever it is to get a wholesale deal. But you got to remember too, it is all subjective, right? So if I want to do probates, maybe it's about 600 calls to get a deal versus maybe a cold calling list, right? So if you got like X leads, you get 1,000 free skip traces, and you might pull a high equity list. It's going to be kind of hard to get a deal from just a high equities of 1,000, even though they're skip trace for free at X leads, because they're not as high quality as the probate. So I recommend if you go to X leads, right, upload the probate list and you can get that skip trace like 700 or 1,000 of them, then you probably get a deal from that. But it's all about the quality of leads too. So it's a lack of knowledge of exactly how far to go. It's also a lack of knowledge of how to track KPIs. It's a lack of knowledge of how to wholesale for free. That's why I have a free wholesaling course, freewholesaling.com. It's also my free wholesale community. And the thing about it is a lack of knowledge can also be a lack of just knowing the right people. So if you go to my free Discord, zachdiscord.com, you can be in a community of other wholesalers making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Just see what they're doing and how you can do the same thing for wholesaling success. And number 3 is a lack of what I call that killer instinct, where a person's just not getting a deal because they do not accept the notion of thrive or die. And what I mean by this is most wholesalers just cannot accept that either they are going to get a deal and thrive or somebody else is going to get a deal and your business and dreams are going to die. There's that lack of like, I got to go out here and get it. It's just that, I hope I can get a deal, or I hope this works out. And there's no belief there. There's no understanding that the only way I succeed is if I believe I can do it and then I go out here and do it. Wholesaling real estate is a fight. I know a lot of people want to be in a fight or want to fight, but sometimes when your back is against the wall and someone's looking to hurt you, you have to fight. And if you roll over when someone wants to hurt you, then you're doomed, right? That's not how the animal kingdom works. And so you got to understand that this is a thrive or die type business. Not that it's high stress, not that I'm trying to get you stressed out or anything, but if you just go out here and thrive, you tell yourself that I'm going to be a winner, I'm going to survive, and I'm always going to do what's needed for me and my family, you're going to be successful because you're going to believe it can be done. When you go in a fight, you can't believe that you're going to lose or that it's not going to end up well for you. You have to believe that you can do it and you're going to win the fight. And this fight is against you and your broke self. You and a lifetime of being broke. You have to fight it and kill that type of brokenness and really a lifetime of struggling. You have to kill that old self from you. And that's having the right mindset for success. Number 4, again, it is the mindset of you only lose when you quit. And what I mean by this is a lot of wholesalers decide that they're going to lose in wholesaling by just quitting. And the thing about wholesaling is the game is still being played. You're still going from point A to point B. And the race is not timed. The race, it doesn't have like a time where, it's over, we're packing up, the race is done. Like, it's a race that can happen for 10, 15 years to get your first deal. But it's a race that never ever stops unless you decide to throw in the towel and quit. And that's the thing here. You're only going to lose in wholesaling. You're only going to not get that first deal when you decide to quit. When you decide enough is enough and I'm not going to wholesale anymore. Those are the only real losers in this business. The only losers in wholesaling are the ones that absolutely go out here and just give up. And I don't think you're that type of person. But if you're struggling, maybe because you just quit or you mentally quit and you're not getting anywhere. So we have to have that change in our minds. Now, the last thing is something important, but it's actions over results. And this basically means you need to focus all your attention on the actions that you need to take for success and not the results that you want. So you probably clicked on this video focusing on the results of wholesaling real estate. Oh, get a deal, 10, 15, 30 grand. Like that's all what we ultimately want. But when you're this type of person that says, I'm going to manifest making $30,000 in wholesaling. I'm going to manifest it. Well, you can manifest whatever you want, but that's not going to get you anywhere. The only way you actually get results and actually get wholesaling deals is by focusing not on the results, but on the actions. So when you tell yourself you want to make $30,000 in the next month, which is completely possible by wholesaling houses, especially with no money at all, you should stop focusing on the results. Say, okay, well, that means I need to do 3,000 cold calls in the month to get the deal. Because once you start focusing on 3,000 calls, 3,000 calls, 3,000 calls, 3,000 calls, you end up actually doing what you focus on. Not on what you want, but what you focus on. So if you just focus on keep running, you're going to keep in the race versus 26 miles, 26 miles, 26 miles. Just focus on keep running. And once you start doing that, you actually start getting more success. So focus more on the actions you have to take versus the results that you want to get. So speaking of how many actions you have to take to get a deal, let's break down exactly the type of marketing you need to do to get a wholesale deal. So if you're looking to start marketing, getting a deal, I would really kind of focus on 5 different types of marketing channels. And let's break down how many types of marketing channels you have to do to get a wholesale deal. So the first one is cold calling. So how many calls do you need to get a deal? Next here is texts. How many texts do you have to send out? Next here is how many reverse drawing for dollars sticky notes, how many drawing for dollars leads you have to get, and maybe how many direct mail pieces you have to send out. So cold calls have an insane variability of what you have to do to get a deal, because sometimes it's like only 500 calls, sometimes it's like 3,000 calls. But I'll tell you, a good range is going to be 500 to about 4,000. Now you might be like, Zach, what in the world is this big range? Well, this is going to be probates, maybe even the arrest record list, water shutoffs, fire damage properties, like really, really niched out data that you can get for free at freewholesaling.com. We actually have an entire government list spreadsheet. Or if you pull like a high equity list in like Phoenix, Arizona, you're probably going to be closer to making 4,000 calls. For text, it's going to be a lot more. You probably got to double that, about 1,000 to about 8,000, depending on the list you have. Now, this is definitely a lot less work, but if you text like the Driving for Dollars list, you'll definitely get a deal within 1,000 from what I've seen. But if you're using like a regular paid list, you're probably at like 8,000 for this. So just to understand generally where you got to be at. Now with reverse Driving for Dollars, really depends on the list you do. I'd say it's about between 300 and 600 to be kind of fair. So if I am intentionally reverse Driving for Dollars, right? So I have my sticky note, it's like a sticky note like right here, and I slap that on the door and it says, hey, my name's Zach, I had a quick question about your property. Please give me a call back. And I'm slapping these on like pre-foreclosures or probates. I'm probably gonna do 300 if I intentionally go after the pre-foreclosure and put a sticky note on that house. Now, if I'm just driving around looking for ugly houses, maybe I just put them on anything that's ugly, probably 600 of those will get you a deal. Now, Driving for Dollars, it's gonna be roughly the same. You're probably gonna be at 400 to about 600 I've seen. So you're going around town, you're looking for an ugly house, you get that lead, for you to call or text, probably 400 to 600 for a deal. And to do direct mail, I'm assuming you're using like a postcard, AdX leads. You're probably gonna need to send at least 3,000 mail pieces if you're using a postcard to go out here and get a deal. So roughly that is where you need to be at in your marketing and your actions to go get a deal. So when you're looking like, I want to get a deal, focus on these actions if you want to call, text, reverse Drive for Dollars, or direct mail. Now, if I have to leave you off to something that's going to help skyrocket your success, like turbo boost you getting deals, I want you to really think about life as a spiral. Not a good spiral, not a bad spiral, by just momentum. And this is generally where your life in business, or maybe your life in general, is going to be at. What I mean by this is a spiral that if you start going up, it will propel you up with momentum. If you start doing bad things and going down, it'll propel you down. It's kind of like if you push a ball to the left, momentum is just going to keep getting it left. If you push it to the right, it's just going to go further to the right. The ball doesn't care if it's going left or right. There's no meaning to the ball. It's going wherever momentum is pushing it. So if you start doing good things, usually in your life, good things happen. Now, things can always stop momentum, but it's a lot harder to stop the momentum when it's going full speed ahead. Versus the other side, if you're doing bad things, worse things happen, good things, better things happen. So when you want to look at these spirals is they'll either go down or they'll go up in your life. And you really got to see where you want to be at. I prefer everybody goes up, right? We want to do something here called an upward spiral. If you want to do bad things, you're going to get a downward spiral. So you choose in wholesaling where you want to be at. How these spirals work is maybe on the downward side, right? There's actually a true story of somebody I know. They decided after doing 75 wholesaling real estate deals that they are going to spend $18,000 on PPL. His name is actually Zach, FY. It's a fun fact. He actually was one of the guests on the live stream. He learned from me, got 75 deals, and he spent $18,000 on what we call PPL, which is just a really bad marketing thing, right? It makes it seem like it changes everything. All you gotta do is close the leads, they're the best, and you make all this money and this great return when honestly you don't really get anything. And a lot of people actually lose all their momentum in wholesaling. So the guy that did 75 deals, he spent $18,000 on PPL because somebody convinced him to do it. Definitely not me. Guess what happened? He started closing 0 deals and he spent all of his time on this PPL company. And it just kept going down and down and down. He was closing no deals, so he had to stop his cold calling and texting, which was getting him deals. He felt like he sucked at closing, even though he closed 75 deals prior to this over 4 years, because he just couldn't get anything done. He got so sick and discouraged of wholesaling that he was about to quit until he came back to me and said, what do you do? I say, what are you doing on the other end? And when he started out in wholesaling, he had this other spiral. He started texting and calling by himself. Then he got 3 or 4 deals and he started hiring VAs to cold call. Then he started getting more leads and he started closing more. And then he started getting more dialers and he started doing more. and he had better employees, and he had a whole system, and he was making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. But then he started doing something that started tanking his business. So this is how momentum works in wholesaling. You have to choose what you want to do. Now, I definitely recommend you stay away from PPL, and freewholesaling.com would tell you never to use that type of strategy, because it sounds great, but in the truth, most people, they're not really going to close many deals from it or do well at all. You see a lot of people online touting about PPL, about how they're closing deals when all they're doing is just writing contracts, and you never see them actually go to the finish table. They never actually finish and get some leads. Now, people obviously will do that, and there are individuals that are really good at it. But for every single person I've found to get a deal from PPL, there's always 50 or 100 using calling or texting get a deal. And the vast majority, sometimes you can just lose all your money doing this, when if you're cold calling by yourself, you can't lose all your money. So start where you want to be at. But if you just do more marketing, you end up getting more leads. When you get more leads, you get more offers, more contracts, and you start doing more deals. Some momentum works. And this is the general law I have for most people. It's like, Zach, I just got my first deal. What do I do? And I always say, well, how did you get your first deal? Like, guys, I talk really bad about wholesaling on-market properties. I don't really want anyone to wholesale MLS deals. But there's another individual who's making 60 grand a month learning from me at freewholesaling.com, and he just used that for his own principles for wholesaling on market. He said, Zach, I'm making 60 grand a month. How do I double this? And I said, well, what do you do? He says, well, I wholesale MLS. I said, oh, he's like, yeah, I know you said never to do it, but I did it. I'm having success with it. I said, okay, well, screw everything I just said. If you're making 60 grand a month wholesaling MLS properties, keep doing that and keep doing that at scale. And then when you keep doing that, maybe you want to try some of our stuff, but do it on the side. Because if this is working, you do not stop what's working. If something is pushing you for positive momentum, calling, getting you deals, texting, getting you deals, don't stop doing it. One of the worst things I see is somebody gets their first deal under contract, and they stop marketing. And then that deal gets out of contract, and then boom, they have no more leads, and their whole business is shuttered and screwed up. Do the right thing, and do the thing that'll push you to having upward trajectory and success, not downward. And that is why most wholesalers struggle to get their first deal. Do the action, believe in yourself, and focus on doing the work. Guys, if you want to learn wholesaling real estate absolutely for free and join my free wholesale community, go to freewholesaling.com. And like always, guys, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you soon. This is Zach Ginn signing out. Have a blessed one.